they're just like, stock market is at its highest. You know what I mean? Let's maintain the status quo. Where I think people are just like the status quo as it exists, with like billionaires amassing 60% of all wealth created in the United States, and your average American not being able to afford a $500 expense. It's just like, I think, and on that term, I think the elitist left has just, they've gotten disassociated with the realities of your working class. And I think that's where, I think in today's society, I mean, with automation, AI, outsourcing, especially with other countries are going through their industrial revolution. I even say like a knowledge based revolution as well, where workers are not only like getting more industrial jobs, but like your Indians are, they're getting a lot of coding jobs and knowledge based jobs, and so they're becoming viable in the market, where American companies are just like, hey, if we're going to be brutal against immigrants coming to the United States, let's go ahead and make companies outside of the United States and give labor 20 cents on the dollar. Where I think your elitist left, they say this is the system, it's operating, things are at its highest, but it's neglecting the problems of the system. And I think that's where maybe your elitist left has a disconnect in today's society.
I mean, that's the whole disconnect between the elitist left and the populist left. The populist left, the enemy is the rich. That's what it is. And on the populist right, the enemy is the foreigner.
Right.
Okay, now they align on the Jews because Jews are foreigners
Right.
and they got a lot of money.
Right.
So if you're a Jew, then you're in dangerous waters from both sides of the populist aisle. But yeah, you're right. It's completely a. I'll say you're right that the issue is economic, in terms of the difference between the populist left and the elitist left. I
Right.
think as a member of the elitist left, which no one really likes to defend for some reason, maybe it's because it's not popular, but I think the elitist left position is like, okay, things objectively aren't nearly as bad as they've been in the past. And that's just true. You look at the Great Recession, you look at the Great Depression. I mean, now there are social issues, right? There's housing in particular is high. That makes it hard to start a family and do certain
Absolutely.
things. But like objectively, the economy has not been bad. And again, if you think that's untrue, then visit 2008.
Absolutely.
So it's really not that bad. And then if you wanted to fix it, it's like, okay, what are your actual solutions? And then that's where you start going into some, the populist left starts really trying to tear down the system. And then the elitist left is like, we can't just tear down the whole system. Right. So like you can complain about the problems. Right. I think Zohran Mamdani is kind of like the biggest, poster boy for this in recent history. It's like you can complain about all the problems and you can say a bunch of things that sound good and people can like at least like even if they don't believe in your solutions, if they at least believe that you care about their actual problems, then you can have some success. And this is where I worry about um, the way to win causing you to have to become someone different. Because I remember something that Zoran said. He was like, I think they asked him like how he came up with his policy positions. He was like, I listen to the people, right? I talk to the people. I understand what they want, and that's what I do. I'm like, well, that's a very unprincipled perspective, right?
That is
Like it's like his principle is whatever is
the
popular in
people.
his area and whatever the people
Right.
want. And I'm like, that's exactly what worries me about the Democratic Party. Is like instead of like actually having core ideas and principles you stand for, you just say, what's going to win me in the election? What do people want to hear? And let me tell you that. Right. And it's like a parent parenting a child. Now, when I say this is where people are like, oh, you condescending elitist, right? When I make this parent child reference, but like imagine your parent parenting a child and you just want the child to be happy. And the child says, I want cake. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'll give you some cake. And it's dinner time, but we got to eat some real food. No, I'd rather have cake for dinner too. Um, I mean, it's not really a good thing, but I want cake though. It's like, do we just give them cake, right? Is it because that's what the people want? Do we just do whatever they want, even though it doesn't make sense?
Not
And
at all.
that's what I'm. But if you want to win, then Zoran Mamdani just showed you, right? don't have any principles, just do what people say, right? And I think this goes back to the initial start of this conversation, which is if you're an intellectual, how do you navigate this environment? And so, as an elitist left, here's what I'll say: elitist left, I'm still for the people. I'm for the same people that Zoran Mamdani is for. I'm not out here trying to maximize the wealth of the Jeffrey Epstein class, right? There's no point in that, right? So, and then again, the elitist left has always had stuff like progressive taxes. The rich people have never voted for the left. So, like, the left is for the people, even the elitist left. But in terms of like having a very strong populist, anti-rich agenda, what is the actual policies that we want to pursue? And I think that is where I'm open to hear what the populist left has to say about what's actually going to make the economy better. But for the most part, what I often hear is just make everything free and lower taxes. And if you do that, you're going to have a bunch of debt. You're going to have a large deficit because if you make everything free, it's just going to come from the government in terms of debt. And if you're not raising taxes, then you're still not going to be able to pay the debt. So you're spending more, you're taking in less, and then you just end up drowning in interest. And so, like, just practically speaking, like, I understand the sentiment of, hey, we want to make life better for working people, and it's difficult for us out here. I get that. What's the actual solution? And I think that's where the elitist left is hesitant, where the populist left isn't as worried about the solution, or at least they're not as worried about the long term consequences of their solutions,
Right.
like drowning in debt forever. Um, I think that's the disconnect. It's not that the elitist left doesn't care about the people; it's that we want to understand the actual policy changes that would need to make that happen, and we want to understand if that's responsible in the long run.
I think, if I'm being honest, and you tell me, even based on our previous conversations for years, I would, I think I lean more towards populist left, even though I think I'm a middle ground between populist left and elitist left. But I think in this moment, especially, I think I can understand the context of the populist left while understanding the elitist left as well. But I'll say this: to me, in the perspective from the perspective of the economy, everything I mentioned before, AI, automation, outsourcing jobs, how other countries are going through not only their industrial revolution, but like maybe a knowledge based revolution as well. I think, I do think, and this is just my personal opinion, I do think you're reaching especially with like other nations going into population decline, I think you're reaching with capitalism being a allocation of resources and how resources are created and distributed. I think you're reaching a plateau at which either the system has to be checked or conversations have to be had. And I do think some of the answers to today's uncertainties is going to be some sort of handout. And I'm not sure how the taste of that from an elitist
Oh, it's
left
bad. It's a bad
position. I don't
taste.
know.
It's a bad
Yeah,
taste.
but I do think that it's naturally the case.
Well, so here's what I'll say: like the Andrew Yang position, to me, that's a fine conversation to have if we have generally intelligent AI that makes humans obsolete at working. Period. Like we're just
Right.
there's no reason to pay a human doctor. There's no reason to pay a human software engineer. There's no reason to pay a human lawyer. There's no reason to have humans making movies anymore. They can make movies better than like if AI is so good that the unemployment rate is like 40%, 50%, then yeah, we got to do something, right? But like if unemployment is still low, we don't need to break the system. So like until unemployment is actually high, I don't want to talk about handouts.
And that's where I'm not okay with it, man, because I think it's going to be I think the conversation is happening slowly but surely. And I think the rate at which technology is going to move is going to be faster than the rate at which jobs can be replaced in our system. And I think just in the, and
Then
this
let it
is just
happen though.
me.
Let it happen. And like once the unemployment rate goes up, I'm happy to have that conversation. But if
I,
people still got jobs, then let them work. If we start paying people to not work, Yeah, we're wasting
It's
our money.
but not in a system, and this is where I think the elitist left doesn't understand. Like, not in a system to where if you can't afford a $500 expense, or the ask is you're working two jobs, and the ask is just for you to afford a two-bedroom apartment is to make three times the rent, and it's just like there's no way, and so now you can't even afford reasonable housing. It's just like, but you're doing everything that you can by today's metrics. It's just like that system exists in today's society, and
Well, so
the
here's the thing. What I'd rather focus on is things that don't require breaking this. Again, we've won the competition of Earth, and we've been winning the competition of Earth for a long time, right? So being like, oh, well, everything's horrible. Well, if it's horrible, we're the best at being horrible in human history and in the present
absolutely,
moment, right? So let's
absolutely.
be careful about any drastic changes. Like talking to Michael Jordan. Well, if you listen to me, then you probably could have been even better, Michael Jordan. It's like, okay, maybe.
I mean,
So I like to be careful about that, and I'd prefer to have solutions that don't fundamentally challenge the system. So, for instance, one of the reasons that people can't afford things is because they're drowning in debt. Why are they drowning in debt? Because of college, right? They go to college, they go and they try to pursue higher education, especially if they don't finish or they study something that doesn't make any money. You could be spending 20, 30 grand a year up north of that, depending on where you go. And if you're there for 3 years and then you don't graduate, you drop out at the end. Now you got 90 grand worth of student loan debt. Like in the past, people didn't really go to college at a high rate. And so no one had, and it was cheaper. Even if you did, it didn't cost that much, right? Today, a lot of people are going and it's super expensive. And so that's just, for instance, like that's just one reason that a lot of people can't afford things that is controllable. That is a decision we can make better decisions and not have that problem. Such as learn a trade, right? Not everybody is designed to, go to higher education. Sometimes you just need to know how to do some electrical stuff, do some plumbing. You can make good money. You can make better money than a lot of people who go to college doing, skilled trades. Um, what else? What other ideas in terms of housing? We could try to change some of the laws that we have that block new housing construction, so that we can increase the housing supply, and also train young people in how to build those houses. Right. So now you got young people have jobs building new houses, increasing the housing supply, and then the cost of housing comes down because you're increasing the housing supply. So you both have jobs and more housing. Right. So like there's things we can do from an entrepreneurial, from a good decision making perspective that don't require us to just start mass money printing programs that we don't have the tax revenue to afford, and we just end up drowning in debt because of populism reasons. Like let's actually, instead of like trying to make rules to, you know improve people's lives, let's actually work and do actual value producing activities to improve people's lives.
And I completely agree. But to me, that's more mixed. Because like to me, I don't feel like that's an elitist left position, because it like to me, I think, or at least the perceived elitist left position is to maintain the status quo. And it's just like, and I think that perceived maintaining the status quo, things are at economically at its highest. I think that is where the concern is, where people are just like, where I think what you're stating in terms of like housing being a real issue, and that being the number one, like if you're talking about your average person's wealth or portfolio, your house traditionally is going to be your biggest asset. And
Right.
so it's just like, so because people can't even afford to have to gain a house, they're not able to accumulate wealth. And it's just like,
And start
well,
a family.
exactly. And so now, like when you're actually addressing those issues, I think you are that elitist left position actually starts to sound populist left, because I think that is where
Well, maybe we figured out how to bridge the gap, because like I do,
right.
there are certain things we can do that will address those issues that the populace left cares about. I feel like my main issue was the solutions they have, which is just like print money and give it to everybody. It's like, dude, like you understand inflation? Like it's,
Right, right. No,
money is going to be worth less, and we're not going to be able to afford because we're going to be borrowing it, and then all the tax money we do take is going to go to interest. And I think we already spend more on interest than we do on defense. We spend a lot on defense, right? And so, yeah, I feel like we can address the problems in ways that don't destroy the principles of the system.